Welcome to Silent Crime Case, where the truth hides in plain sight. Tonight we uncover the shocking story of betrayal, abuse of power, and tragedy in the quiet town of Pine Haven. What begins as the story of a young woman with dreams of a brighter future spirals into a tale of forbidden secrets, deadly consequences, and a community forever scarred. As the web of lies unravels, the question remains: how far would someone go to protect their darkest secrets? Stay with us as we unravel the silent crime that shook Pine Haven to its core. Nestled in the heart of South Carolina, the small town of Pine Haven was known for its quiet charm and close-knit community. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Among its 10,000 residents was a young woman named Abigail Lynn Carter, an 18-year-old whose vibrant personality and ambition made her a standout in the town. Abigail had recently graduated from Pine Haven High School, where she excelled academically and participated in numerous volunteer programs. Abigail's life, however, was far from easy. Following the tragic death of her mother 2 years earlier, she had taken on the role of caretaker for her younger siblings, 15-year-old Ellie and 9-year-old Noah. Despite the weight of her responsibilities, Abigail remained optimistic. Her goal was to save enough money working at the local grocery store to move to Columbia and pursue a degree in nursing. She often spoke of her dream to make a difference in people's lives, a dream inspired by the nurses who had cared for her mother during her illness. But for all her plans and determination, Abigail longed for something more, a sense of excitement that Pine Haven couldn't offer. This longing for something beyond the familiar would lead her down a path that would forever alter her life and that of her family. It all began on a warm evening in June 2019. Abigail attended a community barbecue where she met Sheriff Daniel Huxley, a 44-year-old lawman who had been Pine Haven's sheriff for over a decade. Sheriff Huxley was charismatic, respected, and seemingly devoted to his family and community. But beneath his polished exterior lay secrets that would soon unravel, dragging Abigail and the entire town into a vortex of tragedy. She could not have foreseen that this one-chance meeting would irrevocably change her destiny. At the barbecue, Sheriff Huxley made a point of introducing himself to Abigail, striking up a conversation that began with pleasantries, but quickly turned personal. Abigail found herself drawn to his charm and confidence, qualities that seemed so different from the boys her age. For Sheriff Huxley, however, the interaction was more calculated. He had a reputation, though largely unspoken, for taking an interest in young women who were vulnerable. Their initial encounter turned into a series of chance meetings around town. Sheriff Huxley would stop by the grocery store where Abigail worked, often finding an excuse to linger near her register. What started as friendly banter escalated into private conversations. Abigail, flattered by the attention of someone so influential, felt both exhilarated and uneasy. Despite her reservations, she couldn't deny the excitement she felt when he was around. By mid-July 2019, the two began meeting in secret. Abigail confided in her best friend Sarah Whitman about the relationship, describing it as thrilling yet terrifying. "It feels like I'm living in a movie," she told Sarah one night. "But I know it's wrong." Sarah urged her to end things, warning her about the potential consequences. But Abigail struggled to let go. Sheriff Huxley's attention made her feel special, as though she had finally escaped the shadow of her small-town life. Unbeknownst to Abigail, their growing bond was already setting off alarm bells in Pine Haven. A few locals noticed the sheriff's frequent visits to the grocery store and began to whisper. But it was Abigail's decision to confide in Sarah that would eventually seal her fate, as Sarah's misplaced trust in another friend allowed the secret to begin spreading. What began as a hidden affair was now dangerously close to being exposed. By early September 2019, Abigail began to feel unwell. Initially, she dismissed it as stress from juggling work, school applications, and her responsibilities at home. But when the symptoms persisted, she decided to take a pregnancy test. The result confirmed what she had feared. She was pregnant. The revelation left Abigail in a whirlwind of emotions. She spent days grappling with what to do, confiding only in Sarah. "How am I supposed to tell him?" she asked tearfully during one of their late-night conversations. While Sarah urged her to be cautious, Abigail felt she had no choice but to tell Sheriff Huxley. The opportunity came sooner than she anticipated. During one of their secret meetings, Abigail revealed her pregnancy. Sheriff Huxley's reaction was far from supportive. Though he initially tried to mask his shock, his demeanor quickly shifted to one of irritation and fear. He insisted they keep the matter private, promising to provide financial support but making it clear he wanted no further complications in his life. "This can't get out, Abigail," he told her sternly. "You don't understand what's at stake." His tone was icy, as if issuing a warning more than a plea. What Abigail didn't tell Sarah, however, was how deeply this pregnancy intertwined with her family's struggles. Her younger sister Ellie had recently begun acting out, and Abigail suspected something deeper was going on. Ellie's involvement with a group of troubled teens in the area had become a source of tension in their home. Abigail often took on the role of protector, shielding Ellie from the consequences of her poor decisions. She had also quietly covered some of Ellie's debts to keep her safe from potential dangers. In many ways, Abigail's pregnancy felt like an extension of the sacrifices she was already making for her family. For Abigail, Huxley's reaction was a crushing blow. She had hoped he might stand by her, even if their relationship was unconventional. Instead, she was left feeling more isolated than ever. Deep down, she feared that the weight of her own secrets, combined with Ellie's, had made their lives a dangerous tangle of deception. On the evening of October 3, 2019, Abigail's life took a chilling turn. That night, she received an unexpected call from Sheriff Huxley, who insisted they meet in person. He sounded tense, almost desperate, and asked her to meet him in the wooded area near her home, a place they had used for secret rendezvous in the past. Though hesitant, Abigail agreed, hoping they could finally discuss a plan for the future. Unbeknownst to Abigail, her sister Ellie had been secretly monitoring her comings and goings in recent weeks. Ellie's own troubles had caused her to grow suspicious of Abigail's increasingly secretive behavior. When Ellie noticed Abigail leaving the house that night, she decided to follow her, staying at a safe distance. When Abigail arrived at the meeting spot, she found Sheriff Huxley waiting. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with agitation. Their conversation quickly escalated into an argument. Abigail demanded that he take responsibility for the situation, while Sheriff Huxley tried to convince her to leave Pine Haven and start over somewhere else. "You're young," he said. "You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw it away on this." But Abigail refused. She insisted she wasn't going anywhere, and that he needed to be part of their child's life. As the argument grew more heated, Abigail threatened to expose their relationship if he didn't step up. Sheriff Huxley's response was chillingly calm. "You don't want to do that." What neither of them realized was that Ellie had witnessed their heated exchange from the shadows. The argument seemed to grow more intense, but Ellie froze, unsure whether to intervene. As the forest grew darker, Abigail sensed something was deeply wrong but had no idea just how much danger she was in. Ellie later recalled hearing Abigail cry out before she fled back home, too frightened to see what had happened next. The following morning, October 4, 2019, Ellie Carter went looking for her sister when she failed to return home. Knowing Abigail often walked in the woods, Ellie ventured into the dense trees calling her name. As she moved deeper into the forest, she noticed broken branches and disturbed soil. Her heart pounded with a sense of dread. Then she saw it. Abigail's lifeless body lay in a small clearing, partially concealed by leaves and debris. Ellie froze, unable to process the horrifying sight. Abigail's clothes were torn, and her body showed signs of a brutal attack. Overcome with shock, Ellie ran back to the house and called 911, her hands trembling as she described what she had found. When police arrived, they cordoned off the area and began their investigation. Detective Karen Morris, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts, took the lead. The scene was haunting, with evidence suggesting a violent struggle. Nearby, officers found a discarded sheriff's badge and a set of footprints leading away from the site. As news of Abigail's death spread through Pine Haven, the community was plunged into grief and disbelief. The young woman with a bright future had met a tragic and untimely end, and the circumstances surrounding her death hinted at secrets that would soon shake the town to its core. This was just the beginning of uncovering a web of deceit. Detective Karen Morris and her team wasted no time launching a thorough investigation into Abigail's murder. The discovery of Sheriff Huxley's badge at the scene immediately raised red flags. How could someone as prominent as the sheriff be connected to such a brutal crime? As the officers combed through the evidence, they found signs of a violent struggle, broken branches, deep impressions in the soil, and traces of blood leading away from the clearing. In addition to these signs, officers found drug paraphernalia near the crime scene, including used syringes and a small bag of white powder. While Abigail was not known to use drugs, This discovery raised troubling questions. Could her sister's connections to dangerous individuals have played a role in the tragedy? The possibility added a layer of complexity to the case, forcing investigators to consider whether Abigail's death was connected to something far larger than her relationship with Huxley. Neighbors and locals were questioned about Abigail's last known whereabouts. Several witnesses mentioned seeing her with Sheriff Huxley in the weeks leading up to her death, sparking even more suspicion. Meanwhile, Detective Morris reviewed Abigail's phone records and text messages, uncovering a series of exchanges between her and the sheriff. The messages painted a troubling picture of their relationship, with Abigail pleading for support and Huxley's responses growing colder and more dismissive. The autopsy report confirmed the chilling reality. Abigail had suffered multiple blunt force injuries, consistent with a struggle. Additionally, the coroner revealed that Abigail was in the early stages of pregnancy, a detail that added another layer of complexity to the case. For Morris, this information solidified her belief that the sheriff had more to hide than he was letting on. As the team pieced together the timeline of Abigail's last hours, whispers of corruption and scandal began to circulate. The town of Pine Haven, once so peaceful, was now buzzing with tension and unease. Everyone wanted to know, was their trusted sheriff capable of murder? Sheriff Daniel Huxley's reputation began to crumble under the weight of the mounting evidence. When detectives called him in for questioning, his usual confident demeanor was replaced with visible nervousness. He denied any involvement in Abigail's death, but admitted to having a momentary lapse in judgment by engaging in a relationship with her. He insisted that he had nothing to do with her murder, and claimed to be a victim of circumstance. Detective Morris wasn't convinced. As the questioning continued, Huxley's story began to unravel. When pressed about the badge found at the crime scene, he hesitated, offering a vague explanation that he must have dropped it during a patrol. However, his alibi for the night of October 3rd was flimsy at best. Huxley claimed to have been at home with his wife, but when detectives interviewed Mrs. Huxley, her account was inconsistent with his. Further digging into Huxley's past revealed a troubling pattern of behavior. A review of departmental records showed multiple complaints from female colleagues over the years, alleging inappropriate comments and actions. While these complaints had been quietly dismissed at the time, they painted a picture of a man who abused his position of power. Adding to the intrigue, financial records revealed suspicious transactions. Investigators found evidence of hush money payments made to other women, similar to the promises Huxley had made to Abigail. These payments, drawn from undisclosed accounts, raised questions about how far Huxley was willing to go to protect his secrets. By the end of the interrogation, Detective Morris was convinced that the sheriff wasn't just hiding something, he was actively obstructing the investigation. The walls were closing in on Huxley, but he continued to deny any wrongdoing, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation. While the investigation centered on Sheriff Huxley, detectives turned their attention to his wife, Margaret Huxley, a prominent figure in Pine Haven's social scene. Margaret was known for her poised demeanor and active involvement in charity events, but behind closed doors her marriage was anything but idyllic. Margaret's initial interview with the detective seemed cooperative, but her answers raised more questions than they resolved. When asked about her husband's whereabouts on the night of October 3rd, Margaret hesitated. She claimed that he had been home, but admitted they hadn't spent the evening together. Daniel said he needed space, she explained. I went to bed early and didn't see him again until morning. Detective Morris noted the tension in Margaret's voice. It became clear that she harbored her own suspicions about her husband's fidelity. As the conversation shifted to Abigail, Margaret's composed facade cracked. She confessed that she had known about the affair but had chosen to stay silent to preserve the family's reputation. However, investigators uncovered evidence that Margaret's silence wasn't entirely passive. A series of text messages between her and Abigail revealed a bitter exchange. In one message, Margaret warned Abigail to stay away from my husband and accused her of trying to ruin their lives. These messages, combined with eyewitness accounts of heated confrontations between the two women, suggested that Margaret's jealousy might have played a role in the tragedy. As the detectives pieced together Margaret's potential involvement, they began to wonder, was she a complicit bystander, or could she have acted out of rage? The complexity of the case deepened, with Margaret emerging as a key figure in the investigation. As news of the investigation spread, Pine Haven became a town divided. On one side were those who believed in Sheriff Huxley's innocence, convinced that he was being framed by enemies or opportunistic investigators. Public opinion was further fueled by the media, which seized on every new detail of the case. Local reporters camped outside the sheriff's office, capturing images of Huxley entering and leaving the building under a cloud of suspicion. Headlines speculated about the affair, the murder, and the web of lies that seemed to surround both the sheriff and his wife. For Abigail's family, the attention was overwhelming. Her younger sister, Ellie, struggled with the trauma of finding Abigail's body. Meanwhile, her younger brother, Noah, barely understood the gravity of what had happened, but sensed the weight of grief in their home. Community members rallied around the family, organizing vigils and fundraisers in Abigail's memory. Amid the growing tension, Detective Morris faced increasing pressure to bring the case to a resolution. Town leaders urged her to tread carefully, warning that the wrong move could shatter what little trust remained in Pine Haven's institutions. But for Morris, the priority was clear: uncover the truth no matter how messy or painful it might be. The divisions within the community mirrored the complexities of the case itself. Secrets, lies, and shifting loyalties were at play, making it increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction. As Morris and her team pressed forward, they knew that the truth would have far-reaching consequences, not just for the Huxley family but for Pine Haven as a whole. On October 15, 2019, 2 weeks after Abigail's body was discovered, the investigation reached a turning point. After gathering substantial evidence, Detective Morris and her team obtained a warrant for Sheriff Huxley's arrest. The decision wasn't made lightly, as arresting a sitting sheriff was virtually unprecedented in Pine Haven. The arrest was carried out early in the morning to avoid a public spectacle. Officers arrived at the Huxley residence just as dawn broke. Sheriff Huxley answered the door in his uniform, his face pale and his hands trembling. He didn't resist as he was handcuffed and read his rights, but his expression betrayed a mix of anger and fear. Margaret watched from the doorway, her face stoic but her eyes filled with tears. "This is a mistake," she whispered, as the officers escorted her husband to a waiting patrol car. News of the arrest spread like wildfire. Within hours, Pine Haven was buzzing with speculation. For some, it was a moment of vindication, proof that even the most powerful were not above the law. For others, it was a shocking betrayal that left them questioning everything they thought they knew about their sheriff. In a press conference later that day, Detective Morris outlined the charges against Huxley, which included obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and suspicion of murder. She emphasized that the investigation was ongoing and that no stone would be left unturned. As she addressed the reporters, she couldn't shake the feeling that the case was far from over. The arrest was a significant step, but the truth behind Abigail's death remained elusive, tangled in a web of lies and deceit. On February 3, 2020, the trial of Sheriff Daniel Huxley commenced, drawing national media attention. Pine Haven's courthouse was packed with reporters, local residents, and Abigail's grieving family, all seeking justice for the young woman's tragic death. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Ellen Hughes, opened with a compelling statement. "This is a case about abuse of power, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of a man's inability to control his darker impulses." The prosecution presented an array of evidence linking Huxley to the crime. Key pieces included his badge found at the scene, incriminating text messages, and forensic analysis of fibers from his uniform on Abigail's body. Testimonies from Abigail's friends and family painted a heartbreaking picture of her final months, highlighting her fear and isolation. The defense, led by veteran attorney William Crane, countered with a narrative aimed at casting doubt on the evidence. They argued that Huxley had been framed by those jealous of his position, and suggested that Abigail's death could have been the result of another individual's vendetta. They also tried to discredit the witnesses, implying inconsistencies in their statements. The trial's first week was filled with dramatic revelations, including an anonymous tip suggesting that Huxley had hired someone to intimidate Abigail. While this lead couldn't be substantiated, it added to the already tense atmosphere in the courtroom. For Abigail's family, every detail was agonizing to hear, but they remained steadfast, hoping for a verdict that would honor her memory. As the trial progressed, the defense shocked everyone by calling Margaret Huxley to the stand. Margaret, who had remained silent in the weeks following her husband's arrest, now found herself at the center of the courtroom. Her testimony was a turning point in the trial, casting a shadow over both her and Daniel. While it stopped short of implicating her as an accomplice, it painted a picture of a fractured marriage consumed by lies and mistrust. The courtroom buzzed with speculation as Margaret stepped down, her tearful departure leaving an indelible mark on the proceedings. Just when it seemed the trial couldn't grow more intense, the prosecution called a surprise witness to the stand, Nathaniel Harper, a former deputy who had worked closely with Sheriff Huxley. Harper, who had resigned months before Abigail's death, claimed he had vital information about the sheriff's conduct. Harper testified that Huxley had confided in him about the affair with Abigail, expressing fear that it would ruin his career. According to Harper, Huxley had even discussed solving the problem to protect himself. While Harper initially dismissed these remarks as frustrated ramblings, he grew concerned when Abigail's death was reported. The defense attempted to discredit Harper, pointing out that he had left the department under unclear circumstances. However, the prosecution bolstered his credibility by presenting phone records showing multiple late-night calls between Huxley and Harper in the weeks leading up to the murder. The most explosive moment of Harper's testimony came when he revealed that he had seen Huxley burning items in a fire pit behind the sheriff's office on the morning of October 4th. Harper claimed he had recognized Abigail's distinctive red scarf among the items being burned, but had been too intimidated to report it at the time. This revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom. If true, it placed Huxley at the center of a cover-up, undermining his repeated claims of innocence. For the jury, Harper's testimony added a chilling new layer to an already damning case, making it harder to believe that the sheriff was merely a victim of circumstance. After 6 grueling weeks of testimony, evidence, and emotional appeals, the jury retired to deliberate. The residents of Pine Haven waited anxiously, their small town now synonymous with scandal and tragedy. For Abigail's family, the wait was excruciating, filled with both hope and dread. On March 17, 2020, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood to deliver the decision. Sheriff Daniel Huxley was found guilty of first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. Gasps echoed through the room, followed by a mix of relief and sorrow. Abigail's family held each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces as justice was finally served. Huxley showed little emotion as the verdict was read, his once commanding presence reduced to a shadow of its former self. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never again wield the power he had so grossly abused. Margaret Huxley, while not charged with any crime, faced the judgment of the court of public opinion. She announced shortly after the trial that she would be leaving Pine Haven to start anew, her life forever marred by the choices she and her husband had made. For Pine Haven, the verdict brought a measure of closure but also left a lingering sense of loss. The town would never be the same, its idyllic facade forever cracked by the darkness that had been exposed. In the aftermath of the trial, Pine Haven began the slow process of healing. Abigail's family established the Abigail Carter Memorial Fund, a scholarship program aimed at helping young women pursue careers in nursing, just as Abigail had dreamed. The fund became a beacon of hope, ensuring that her legacy would live on despite the tragedy of her death. Ellie Carter, now 16, found solace in her sister's memory. She entered a counseling program to cope with the trauma of finding Abigail's body and the guilt she carried from that night in the woods. Over time, Ellie transformed her pain into purpose. She became an advocate for victims of abuse and violence, speaking at schools and community events about the importance of seeking help and standing up against injustice. Her bravery inspired many, proving that even in the face of unimaginable loss, resilience could prevail. Meanwhile, Sheriff Huxley's downfall had lasting implications for Pine Haven. Following the trial, additional investigations revealed years of financial misconduct, including the misuse of public funds to pay off women connected to his extramarital affairs. Huxley was charged with multiple counts of embezzlement and sentenced to an additional 5 years in prison. His disgrace became a cautionary tale about the abuse of power and the devastating consequences it can bring. For the residents of Pine Haven, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The scandal and heartbreak left scars, but it also brought the community closer together. Vigilant and determined to honor Abigail's memory, the town resolved to ensure that such a tragedy would never happen again. Abigail's story became a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and the importance of standing up for what is right. As Pine Haven moved forward, her memory remained a guiding light, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and justice could prevail. And so, the tragedy of Abigail Carter stands as a haunting reminder of how unchecked power and hidden secrets can shatter lives and entire communities. While Pine Haven may never fully recover from the scars left behind, Abigail's legacy continues to inspire hope and resilience through those who honor her memory. What do you think about this case? Do you believe justice was truly served? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed unraveling this silent crime case, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story where the quietest towns hold the darkest secrets. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe.